Hello, I'm P. Renada. Welcome to Rappler Talk. We're speaking with Senator Risa Hontiveros about the Bawal Bastos Act. Thank you so much, Senator, for being here despite the weather and to talk about this very important law.
Thank you for inviting me.
So for our audience, Senator Hontiveros was the principal author and sponsor of the Bawal Bastos Law in the Senate. So we're going to speak with her today about the challenges facing this law and also a little bit about how Malacanang reacted to this law given the President's history of also uttering sexist remarks. So thank you, Senator, for being here. Siguro we can start with the question on people's minds. Did the President really sign the law or did it lapse into law?
Isn't it strange how we even have to ask that question? Di ba dapat ano na lang presumption of regularity? Actually, ang pagkaalam ko was that it lapsed into law last April 19, which was in fact confirmed by then Officer in Charge Justice Secretary Guevara in May, the following month. Ngayon, bigla na lang Malacanang produces this document showing purportedly that the President signed the law on April 17.
2 days before.
2 days before that it lapsed into law. And then they've only announced it now, 3 months later. So, ano ba nangyayari? Is this another example of incompetence of Malacanang? Or, even worse, is this an attempt by the administration to deodorize, to sanitize the blatant sexism and misogyny of the chief executive, rob the real champions of this law, who are the women and LGBT advocates and legislators, and claim it as the administration's achievement in the run-up to the President's fourth SONA. Well, whichever it is, especially if it's the second case, hindi kami papayag. We refuse to be used to make excuses for the President's or make pretensions about the President's real sexism and misogyny. This is a triumph of the women and LGBT alone.
Were you able to clarify with the PLLO what exactly happened?
Not yet. Medyo nasa state of puzzlement pa kami and medyo nakataas yung mga kilay namin. Ano ba talaga nangyari, Kuya?
Okay, so a little bit about the law. What was the story behind it and what convinced you that such a law was necessary?
Well, there are many prior references we could make to spot gaps where this law fills in that space. There's nothing, for example, in the revised penal code that identifies and prohibits catcalling. So in fact, LGUs like Manila and Quezon City had to go ahead with their local ordinances specifically prohibiting and punishing the offense of catcalling. And even Davao City, imagine, the President's own home city where he served as mayor for 3 decades. And then even in our anti-sexual harassment law of 1995, ang pinagbabawal lang doon at pinarurusahan is sexual harassment by a superior to a subordinate in a workplace setting.
Very specific.
Very specific, and though an achievement in itself, but limited to that relationship and that space. Dito sa Bawal Bastos or Safe Streets and Public Spaces Act, we are also adding the dimensions of sexual harassment done by subordinates to superiors, and then in public spaces, also online, and between peers, and between strangers, for example, on the streets.
And another thing that we saw in the law was that it also protects lesbian, gay, bisexual,
yes,
transgender,
because
LGBT.
there's a specific identification and prohibition against homophobic and transphobic slurs. So it's not just for women, all women, it's also for all LGBT IQ plus persons, whether women or men.
So also something with the law is we see that it tries to enforce a certain behavior through punishment, diba? So may penalties for wolf whistling, catcalling. Do you think this will work? This kind of punishment mentality, or like presenting the stick when, as you said, there are provisions already in the law punishing certain acts. And do you think that that has been effective? Presenting a stick to kind of form behaviors, especially when it comes to Filipinos?
Well, you put your finger on the heart of the matter via the previous prohibitions and penalties. Hindi siya naging ganap na epektibo. That's why we still have a heavily sexist and misogynistic public culture and modes of behavior, even on the streets. And in fact, the way we crafted this Bawal Bastos Law, mas proactive siya. It's really even more about a cultural change, even among the aggressors now. So unfortunately, statistically, the majority of sexual harassers are men. The majority of victims are women and LGBTIQ. But I believe that the men will be and have to be a part of the cultural transformation. So the penalties, the identification of prohibited acts and the penalties as a stick are the secondary matter. And there are some innovative ways we're pursuing through this law. Halimbawa, kapag may gustong magreklamo, she or he can approach a PNP officer on the street or a PNP deputized public official, kung halimbawa dito sa NCR, kung MMDA yon, at ireklamo niya yung gusto niyang reklamuhang tao. The officer can issue a ticket to the suspected offender. So parang violation ng traffic
Parang may
laws,
first warning, second warning.
or violation ng Solid Waste Management Act. Kapag may ticket na na-in-issue, then a fact-finding or investigation process will ensue. So may due process for both. And it will become a matter of evidence. Kapag napatunayan na there was an offense, there was any form of sexual harassment, then the first line of correction is mandatory gender sensitivity training. Kapag hindi lang mild offense, kundi medium or grave, or kapag hindi first offense lang, but second offense or repeated offense, then pwede nang mag-kick in yung higher amount of fines to be paid or longer time of prison time to be served.
Okay. Some of the provisions, well, most of them naman, are pretty straightforward. Yung forms of sexual harassment, which you
Yes.
identify, like wolf whistling,
Yes.
groping is obviously
yes.
a sexual harassment.
Right.
act.
Stalking is one of the
Stalking.
most serious. Yes.
But there are also certain forms here that might raise some eyebrows, especially people who might not be open-minded or who might be thinking of different kinds of scenarios. For example, ma'am, yung any statement that has made an invasion on a person's personal space or threatens the person's sense of personal safety. Some people might say, that's very subjective, na parang how would I know that I'm threatening this person's sense of space? Baka iba-iba yung sense of personal space of different people. Therefore, it could be easily misinterpreted or abused. How would you then help these people impose these kinds of, or identify this or prevent any abuse of these provisions?
Kailangan mabigyan natin ng premium yung nakakaranas ng sexual harassment and those who complain or claim that I feel sexually harassed. And usually naman, yung mga aggressor, kapag may ginawa or sinabi sila that threatens or offends a victim survivor, there will be behavior from the person, the one experiencing it, which should signal to the aggressor na ayoko to. Facial expression, body language, even verbal protest. Pero pag nagpumilit pa siya, then the person may approach a public officer to complain. And as I mentioned earlier, fact-finding ang mag-ensue. So yun yung magiging due process. Over time, it becomes a public education process to signal to those who will claim na hindi ko alam or I don't mean harm, na kapag ang dating sa tao at ang karanasan sa tao who feels sexually harassed is nasa-sexually harass ako, then dapat mag-cease and desist na sa ganong klaseng behavior. So it will in fact hopefully affect that cultural change in our society na yung dating mga joke lang daw or yung dating compliment daw or yung dating I didn't mean any harm. Society can become more sensitized towards women and LGBTIQ who actually feel na nathreaten yung sense of personal safety, nathreaten yung space, hindi na tayo makagalaw sa sarili nating public spaces na maluwag yung kalooban natin.
Is this a law that could be construed as anti-men?
Oh, not at all.
Okay, can you
Oo.
explain?
Actually, in a way, this Bawal Bastos Law also seeks to to prevent that men fall into that culture of kabastusan towards women and LGBTIQ because of not questioning that kind of culture. So, tinutukoy na dito sa Bawal Bastos Law yung mga prohibited acts aside from providing penalties for them. So, it's an educational law in itself. And kapag ang mga lalaki din, as is happening slowly more and more in our society, will embrace the advocacy and become true partners to women and to LGBTIQ persons on this aspect, then indeed they become part of the transformative process.
You mentioned the online harassment portion of the law,
Yes.
and it's also something that could open a Pandora's box of challenges in terms of enforcement, because we all know how hard it is to enforce anything online.
Right.
And there are some forms of online harassment here that could raise questions. For example, yung invasion of victims' privacy through incessant messaging. What if I were to say na, kasi hindi siya nag-reply, emergency, ganyan. How would you then define that?
Probably yung mga incessant na sexually harassing messages kapag ka maipakita nung recipient yung thread na ganon, then that would back up her or his complaint na, of course, hindi ako sasagot sa ganyan kasi
So,
kabastusan
kung
or
improper
marahas
yung
kung
messaging.
improper. And
Okay.
dapat siguro kung paulit-ulit at hindi sumasagot yung tao, it should be a signal to any well-meaning person na ayaw. Kung harasser pa siya, hindi niya mag-gets or ayaw niyang tanggapin yung no means no principle, then that also becomes part of the evidence that the complainant can bring to the authorities.
Then there's also another form of harassment identified, which is posting lies about victims to harm their reputation. This sounds like, could this be construed as something that would impinge on someone's freedom of expression?
Laging debate yan sa ganitong mga batas which seek to effect cultural change. I often hear back from oppositors, you're impinging on freedom of expression,
The President
freedom of
always
speech.
says that.
Si Presidente, kahit abogado sila, paulit-ulit nilang sinasabi yan. But even the President should know, and every lawyer would know, and any citizen would know na naniniwala sa karapatang pantao. We exercise our freedoms, our liberties, while respecting also the rights of others. Kapag may nag-exercise ako ng freedom of expression, but the person I am communicating to says, hey, nakaka-offend yan, nakakabastos, or parang that's already a violation of myself. Diba? Dapat mag-gets ko na yon. Tanggapin ko yung ganung puna, I'll cease and desist from that form of behavior and not do it again. So we cannot argue na I'm exercising my freedom at the expense of someone else's rights. Dapat may mutual respect that's in operation there.
So, to be clear, yung posting lies aspect online, it doesn't have to be sexual in nature to be a violation of the act. It can be any lie.
Ito
Tama.
specific sa sexual harassment
Okay.
online. So, sexism, misogyny, homophobic or transphobic slurs na in the public space, not of the street, pero online.
And it also, meron din kasing impersonating identities of victims online. So that's not necessarily a sexual attack, but it's taking on someone's identity. How would that
Unless-
fall under sexual harassment?
It could fall under a sexual harassment violation kung ini-impersonate ko ang isang tao in a way na parang madudungisan yung kanyang pagkatao or madudungisan yung pagtingin ng mga tao sa kanya in those matters of sex and gender.
So it really has to have a sexual connotation.
It really has to have a sexual connotation para pumasok sa sexual harassment.
Do you think that the PNP Anti-Cybercrime Unit, which is in charge of implementing this law for online sexual harassment, do they have the resources to enforce it?
That's a good question. Ngayon na naisabatas na ito, by, as far as we know, having lapsed into law, unless makipag-agawan pang Malacanang na no, the President actually signed it. Pero ngayong ganap na batas na ito, whatever way it happened, then that's something I'll inquire into during the budget debates later this year. Kung may sufficient resources nga yung PNP Cybercrime Group para gawin yung mandate nila under the law, so that there should be no excuses as far as that aspect is concerned. Ngayon yung reorientation ng ating mga government institutions, kailangan sumabay din.
Was there anything in our online environment in this day and age which convinced you that such provisions on online sexual harassment are necessary?
Definitely. Grabe, sa panahon ngayon ng fake news, ng trolling, the disparagement that evidence-based public discussions has received, kahit dito sa mas focused na area, but very, very important to us human beings na sexual harassment, it has really made the passage of this law all the more urgent and necessary. Na-weaponize na kasi pati yung social media, which started as one of our democratic spaces and weaponized very heavily against women and also against LGBTIQ. Sa panahon ngayon na increasingly authoritarian ng administrasyon. And slowly, more and more citizens are speaking up, including more and more of us women. Ginagamit talaga, unfortunately, ni na Presidente, yung social media space to combat dissent. And you doing it in a very sexist and violent and sexually violent way. So itong Bawal Bastos Law, isa rin siyang resback ng nating mga kababaihan at ng mga LGBT IQ laban sa paggamit ng sex and gender against us in public spaces, including in social media, para pasikipin yung spasyo natin, whether for ordinary day-to-day life or from active citizenship na kasama na doon yung pagsabi natin, ang opinion natin kahit patungkol sa pinakamataas na opisyal.
How would you, ano yung steps that someone, like an online, a netizen would take to catch someone guilty of online harassment? Kunwari, like, na-insulto ka or na-offend ka sexually online, how would you then go about holding that person accountable?
You'd have to make that report to the cybercrime unit if there's a thread that you have screenshot and you can submit that really bolsters your complaint. So any evidence that you can present online, or if the harassment spills over into offline public spaces, then that should come into your complaint.
How about the challenge faced by people who are attacked by anonymous accounts?
Right.
How do we go about holding them accountable?
Yun yung isang pinaka-mahirap. But here in Rappler itself, you've done a yeoman's or yeowoman's job tracking where the troll and the fake news hubs are, even rendering this to us visually, to us, your online followers. So an individual complainant who is attacked or attacked repeatedly by an unknown person would have right to seek the help of the PNP Cybercrime Unit to track down this unknown or anonymous person. Mahirap ngayon yung usapin ng teknolohiya, but by virtue of this Bawal Bastos Law, dapat hindi na nag-iisa ang isang individual na mamamayan who feels violated in her or his rights online.
Okay. So going now to the second part of our interview, which will be more about Malacanang's response to the law. So
Or long non-response.
or funny response. Is the president sexist?
Yes. Unfortunately, our president is sexist. In fact, I've heard him called the sexist in chief or the misogynist in chief. So I'm just so glad that we passed this law during his term.
What challenges do you think lie ahead in enforcing this law, given that we are still under a Duterte presidency?
Well, I mentioned kanina that this Bawal Bastos Law para siyang resback nating mga kababaihan at ng mga LGBTIQ at this time that sexism and misogyny are normalized. They're set as a norm from the highest possible public platform, by the style and the speech and the behavior of our highest elected public official. I'm hoping na sa bisa nitong Bawal Bastos Law, na lalakas ang loob nating mga mamamayan, lalakas ang tinig natin to call out anyone in public spaces, even the most powerful someone in the highest public space, the office of the president, sa mga lengguwahe or mga ugali which harass women and LGBTs, which tend to incite further abuse, which tend to incite even violence against targeted women and LGBTs.
If Duterte makes another rape joke, can he be held liable for it under the law? Bawal ba ang bastos?
Any citizen, even official, including the highest, no one is above the law. So dapat, in principle, magabayan siya ng mga batas natin, including this Bawal Bastos Law. Of course, though, we all know that a sitting president enjoys immunity from suit habang nakaupo siya. But nonetheless, even while he is in office and may not be given a ticket for violating the Bawal Bastos Law, ang pag-asa ko talaga at masaya na ako na may pagkakataon na tayong mga mamamayan, we will be empowered, emboldened to call him out if he ever makes another rape joke, which I am afraid he might or could. If he ever sexually harasses, say, another colleague of yours in media at some press conference here in Metro Manila or in the province. If he incites his colleagues in government to shoot women rebels or whoever in the vagina, because then that would render us women useless. So sana kahit hindi pa siya masingil ng accountability under the Bawal Bastos Law until 2022, tayo mga mamamayan, if we can recover our own voice to say we will no longer allow sexism and misogyny to have the run of our streets, mas lumakas yung loob at boses natin, calling out even the president.
Yesterday in Malacanang, the law was discussed, and Panelo said that people always assume that the president is bastos, but he said he has never been bastos,
Wow.
and it's up to the women daw. Women should know when someone is being funny versus someone is being offensive. What are your reactions?
Oh yes, Secretary Panelo, we know when someone is being just funny or when someone is being outright offensive. Palagay ko by association, masyado nang namanhin si Sec Panelo sa kabastusan ni Presidente. Masyado nang tumataas yung level of tolerance niya para sa kabastusan. But thankfully, hindi lang si Sec Panelo yung nagsiset ng standards. This Bawal Bastos Law sets standards for what are prohibited acts of sexism and misogyny, what actually constitute sexual harassment, at paano ito dapat piniprevent o kung magpumilit pa rin, how these are to be penalized.
So the president himself hasn't spoken about the law, but we know from his past reactions to criticisms of his sexist slurs that the way he responds is to say, for example, dun sa wolf whistling incident, he said, wolf whistling isn't sexual.
Oh
He said that.
my.
So there are people who could think this way as well. How would you respond to that?
That's a typical excuse of an aggressor to claim innocence when it's very clear to the majority of women who have been wolf whistled at. And various surveys will say 3 out of 5 women have ever been sexually harassed in our lifetime. May mga city surveys na 70 to 80% of a certain age group have been sexually harassed. Alam ng babae, alam ng LGBTIQ, alam din ng ilang mga lalaki that wolf whistling is inherently sexual. It's targeted at us as sexual beings, as persons of certain gender. Kaya kahit pa si Presidente ang gumawa ng ganyang pagdadahilan, sorry, may Bawal Bastos Law na hindi napapasa yan.
And see, the president also, aside from yung sexist slurs niya, no, he mentions, or at least in the first year of his presidency, about the alleged sex video of Senator Laila de Lima.
Oh my,
And he said he would share it, even with Pope Francis.
Oh my.
Would that fall under online sexual
Definitely.
harassment?
What the President did and what he encouraged other people to do about that fake sex video about Senator Laila, na ginamit lang niya, pinagawa niya at ginamit lang niya in his political vendetta, highly sexualized, weaponized political vendetta against Senator Laila, for which she is now in jail for more than 2.5 years already, unjustly detained. Definitely that qualifies as online sexual harassment. Fabrication of material against a person to destroy her reputation with all the sexual, not just innuendo, but allegations. One of the most terrible examples of sexual harassment perpetrated by our own president against a woman in our country.
Malacanang now says that since Duterte has his signature on the law,
Yes.
this could mean a change of heart, or he might surprise us daw, according to Panelo. Do you have hope that he might change his ways?
Habang may buhay, may pag-asa. Kaya nga sabi ko, sana binasa niya bago niya pinirmahan. Sana sundin niya. Sana he will set an example. I'm not quite holding my breath, Pia, pero who knows? But I'm not holding my breath. Sana lang, at least tayo, lumakas ang loob natin to call him out. And then, after his term, pag Citizen Duterte na siya ulit, subject na siya sa
Pwede
batas.
na. Okay. Pero ma'am, may prescriptive period yung some of the offenses, right?
Wala
does that
namang batas that will operate retrospectively. I
But
just
I mean,
mean that pag
the
hindi na
next
siya
one.
presidente, pag
when
mamamayan na
he
rin
makes
siya
a new
tulad
joke.
natin,
Okay.
after, if he makes another sexually harassing joke or
As a
statement
citizen.
on July 1 of 2022, subject na siya. Pwede na siyang tawaging Boy Bastos.
Okay. And lastly, ma'am, another common argument for Malacanang is even if the president daw utters these sexual slurs, makes these rape jokes, the Malacanang always urges critics to look to his actions. Na parang he supported RH, reproductive health programs in Davao, and he would supposedly be very courteous to women in person. Why is it important for someone to respect women and LGBTQ, not just in deeds but in words and gestures?
Because the words and the gestures tend to spill over into deeds. The words and the gestures can incite more abuse or actual violence against women and LGBTIQ persons. At hindi mo pwedeng paghiwalayin yung salita ng tao sa gawa niya. Iisang tao lang siya eh. And he is our highest elected public official at that. Yung bawat salita niya takes on the aspect of policy. At hindi lang siya nagsasalita. There are many, we've documented at least one sexist, misogynistic statement every month on average, and that's
From
low.
him?
Yes. I mean, one of the worst examples was calling on our soldiers and police officers to shoot women rebels in the vagina. That was outright inciting to violence and sexual violence because now that would render women useless. So reducing us to a body part, and in such a political and violent manner. So please, no more excuses. Kung ano yung ginawa niyang mabubuti sa nakaraan na sinasabi nila, di dapat nga mas ginagawa niya ngayon. Dapat itigil na niya yung kanyang mga sexist and misogynistic ways. But see, he has actually also used it for his own political actions and the political actions of his administration, especially against critics and heavily against women critics when it comes to sexist and misogynistic ways.
So you're saying he should be consistent?
He should be consistent and let him not use his inconsistency as an excuse. And in any case, kahit siya, presidente, alam niya na meron ng Bawal Bastos Law. So there are those legal principles set into the law already.
All right. So with that, thank you so much, Senator
Salamat
Risa
din.
Hontiveros, for sharing with us your thoughts on this law. And best of luck in monitoring the law's
Thank
enforcement.
you. We need
and also,
it.
yeah, all of us for enforcing it
Yes.
as a society.
Yes.
So thank you so much for watching Rappler Talk. Tune in again next time.